So thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate that. It's been an amazing month so far. We're almost halfway through Hispanic Heritage Month, which has been wonderful, and we've been able to get a lot of really wonderful people to work with us. Okay, so moving on, let's go ahead and get started. So right now,
can you hear me, Mr.?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You can go ahead and do your introduction.
Muy buenas tardes. Bienvenido a la serie de conferencias organizado por el grupo Adelante Latinos del Distrito Escolar Unificado de Glendale. Esta serie de conferencias se está presentando durante el mes de Herencia y Esperanza Hispana. Es presentado en colaboración con la Biblioteca de Arte y Cultura de la ciudad de Glendale, y les damos la bienvenida. Estamos viendo que hay bastantes estudiantes de la CB High School. Muchas gracias, y los invitamos a que nos acompañen a esta segunda conferencia en donde por 5 semanas van a aprender de profesionales latinos que sirven a sus comunidades de diferentes maneras. Y el tema de este mes de la herencia hispana del año 2021 es Esperanza. Una herencia y esperanza hispana, una celebración de herencia y esperanza hispana. Muchas gracias. Para escuchar en español, por favor hagan clic en el icono de interpretación, seleccione español y estamos listos.
Thank you, Aurora. And actually, folks, she did a much better job than I did. I was falling down on the job. So we're proud to present our speaker series for 2021. The theme for this year is Esperanza, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope. So we encourage students to join us for these webinars. We want to thank all of our speakers who have spoken so far, and we also want to thank the people who brought the speakers to us. Beatriz Bautista, I believe, is Dr. Pantoja's connection to Adelante. Also, Yvonne Quinones, Anita Quinones Gabrielian, and Jenny Quinones Skinner. They all have that part of the Quinones clan, but believe it or not, they're not related. That's just coincidental. Isn't that funny? We'd also like to thank the Glendale Unified School District with Superintendent Dr. Vivian Ekchian for all of her help and support with our community and our committee. Also, Jenny Quinones Skinner is the current president of the Glendale Latino Association, and we are presenting this webinar in partnership with the Glendale Public Libraries. We'll be hearing more about Dia de los Muertos celebration coming up at the end. We'd also like to thank our student moderators so far, Samantha Villasenor, Jesse Guzik, Sydney Esquivel, and tonight I'd like to introduce Michael Gonzalez, who will be helping me with the webinar. Our social media presence, and just so you know, these slides will be available. Also, a recording will be available, but this is where you can find us on social media. Our website is part of the GUSD website. You just have to put /Adelante. This webinar will also be recorded for us, and as you can see, our previous 3 are listed here, and as we finish them, I'll be posting them on our YouTube page, which is connected to our website. As you can see, our proud partnership with the Glendale Central Library. We're pleased, and this is our 2nd annual speaker series for Hispanic Heritage Month for Latinx and Hispanic people in Glendale, and even a larger audience. So we thank you all for coming here, and we hope this is something we're going to continue doing. If you're interested in helping us steer the work of the Adelante Latinos Committee, which is a volunteer committee of GUSD administrators, teachers, parents, students, community members, if you're interested, we will be having a meeting via Zoom. The information is here, and it's also on our Facebook page and our website. And also today, so again, I am Bill Gallimore. I'm one of your moderators, and I'd like to introduce Michael Gonzalez, who will be introducing our speaker for the evening. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so today, Dr. Ana Pantoja. Dr. Pantoja graduated from Creighton Medical School in Omaha, Nebraska, and received her family practice residency training at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. After completing training, Dr. Pantoja was recruited to work on a non-profit FQHC, Centro del Barrio, community clinics in South San Antonio, a primarily Mexican-American community clinic with the focus of providing comprehensive quality care and meeting the needs of the indigent, uninsured patients. Upon returning home to Los Angeles, Dr. Pantoja joined AltaMed Medical Group in 2005. Impressed by their presence in the community, the AltaMed mission statement completely aligns with her own. During her 16 years at AltaMed, Dr. Pantoja has developed a large and faithful patient following. Working with multiple members of a family gives her an edge in improving the health of the whole family. She prides herself on making an impact on how her patients learn to manage their health. Dr. Pantoja believes it is because she is able to translate medical terminology and provide her patients with a layman's explanation. This approach helps her patients take control over their own care. 2 summers ago, Dr. Pantoja participated in AltaMed's primary care leadership program as a mentor for medical students. It was a great experience to see our clinics and our profession through the eager young eyes of the students. She reevaluated her mission and reaffirmed with conviction why she decided to be a doctor and who were the people she was here to serve. Dr. Pantoja was also invited to give the keynote speech for the white coat ceremony welcoming the first class of students to AltaMed. It was while preparing this speech she realized that I wanted to sharpen her presentation skills and grow as a mentor. Dr. Pantoja welcomes the opportunity whenever it arises to share my story with young people interested in a career in medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Pantoja. You might want to turn your mic on.
Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. You sound great.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak at the Adelante Latinos Hispanic Heritage Month Speaker Series. I'm really pleased that you invited me to this because as the mother of 2 teens, I think this is a great opportunity for kids to begin to explore and learn about their career choices and honestly just look towards what path they're going to take to get there. I love the theme of it, which is Esperanza and hope, you know, because it never dies, right? And things sometimes happen in our lives that do bring us down and sometimes take the air out of us and we feel like hope is the last thing, you know, there for us. And so I want you to know that that's something you always have to hang on to. So first of all, who am I? I'm a family practice doctor, as you heard. I provide care in the city of West Covina currently. I'm working for AltaMed Medical Group. What this means is that I care for individuals and their family across all ages, genders, and diseases. I have worked with the same company now for about 15 years, a little bit over 15 years. And at times, I'm caring for at least 3 generations of patients. For example, not very long ago, I went ahead and I was seeing a young woman for her physical. And soon thereafter, maybe a couple of weeks later, I provided a physical for her husband and her children. Many times I walk in and I meet a new patient to find out that she's my other patient's mother or grandmother. And honestly, I can't think of a better compliment for a doctor than to have someone come in and say, well, my wife or my daughter or my sister recommended you to me. And that's why I'm here and I've been waiting to see you. Usually I make a connection that I'm seeing the entire family. For example, when I see an abuelita that comes in for her regular visit during the summer with a couple of kids that she's babysitting. I love those opportunities because the kids often remember me fondly from those visits, which makes their future visits for their child exam that much better. And the shots still hurt, but you know, at least they went cooperatively. which makes their own visits with me and other doctors in the clinics, for example, the dentist or the eye doctor, again, that much better because they feel like they're home. They feel like they're being taken care of, not just by me, but by other family members in the same clinic. So this is about heritage. So let me tell you about my heritage. I am, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to take a small break. Can you guys see my slides?
No, ma'am, you need to share.
There we go. Hold on 2 seconds. There we go. Can you see my slides now?
No, ma'am. It's okay. There you go.
There you go.
Right. And now you just want to hit present on the upper right hand corner. There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
And let me just figure out how to click to the next slide. Sorry, Zoom here is taking over all our meetings. I love it. It's a great opportunity to connect, even though, we're not in the same room. So I just have to learn to use it a little bit better. So I do apologize. So again, my heritage is I'm Mexican born in Mexico, raised in East Los Angeles. I'm bilingual, which means I speak both English and Spanish, and I'm bicultural, raised in a traditional Mexican household, as well as having adopted most typical American ideas and values. What that means is I love los bookies. I love to dance salsa. I watch novelas, while at the same time, I love the Beatles and I watched Three's Companies. Mr. Gonzalez or Bill, is there any way that we can figure out if there's anybody else in the audience that's like me, bilingual? I don't know if there's a way that they can raise their hands.
Absolutely. If you're bilingual, you can hit the raise hand function on there. Yeah, wow. We have quite a few. Yeah. Numbers growing. Dr. Pantoja, right now we have a total of 44 attendees out there, and then there's 5 of us. And right now, 23 people, so at least half.
Nice. So then you guys know exactly what I'm talking about being able to go back and forth between our language, both English and Spanish. And by the way, I might actually, go back into Spanish and Spanglish, because training in San Antonio, as you heard earlier, that is the common practice. We do Spanglish. So excuse me for those of you who like, just straight English or Spanish, but I can't help it sometimes. So with that said, I also found myself making some really hard choices. At times, honestly, I really had to go against my mother's traditional ideas. Those balancing acts, especially in my teens, put me under a lot of pressure, not just with her, but at times also with school or other peers. At times, that road was a little bit more difficult for the same reason. But remember, I kind of mentioned that it's not all negative in our lives, right? So just like that sometimes was a stumbling block, I have to tell you that my bilingual abilities also opened a lot of doors. For me, being bicultural also, in my opinion, opened a lot of doors. Now, when I say bicultural, I know you guys are probably, sorry about that. I know you guys are probably wondering, well, what's the difference? What does she mean by cultural? Well, my parents are both Mexican, but I do believe that there's a culture difference between our traditional Mexican upbringing versus, say, those of us that were raised here in East LA or in other cities such as Glendale, West Covina, La Puente. We all have, I think, a little bit of a different culture than it is to have been raised in Mexico. So that's what I mean by two different cultures. So let me share a little bit more about some of those obstacles, both personal and academic, that I had to really overcome to fulfill my dreams to become a doctor. So I was brought to LA at the young age of 2. My mother brought us here from her small town in Mexico, really looking for a better life. Although my mother never really had the idea of me becoming a doctor, and she never really pushed me to do so. She always emphasized that she didn't want me to be a seamstress like her. My mom worked in the garment district of downtown LA, and I must admit that on a couple occasional Saturdays or so, even though I know that child labor laws weren't in effect, I did go in and work with her. And I would just, cut the seams, the little threads off the seams. And, I learned the meaning of what hard work was. I saw how hard she worked, how hard the other people in that one factory worked, and how long the hours were. And I hate to say it, sometimes I saw them clock in or not clock in, especially actually start working before it was time to clock in. I saw them clock out before they were done working, which I thought, I didn't know really anything about labor laws, like I just said, but I knew that was wrong, Unfortunately, sometimes I spoke up, which meant that I couldn't go on Saturdays anymore because their boss noticed that I was watching. So as the eldest daughter in a single parent household, I took on the responsibility of helping my mother financially whenever I could, as well as overseeing my younger brothers and sisters' success from a very young age. I think I got my first job when I was maybe about 14 years old. I also took on the responsibility of translating as soon as I could, anything in that house that came in that she did not understand, whether it was bills or forms or applications and paperwork from school. My responsibilities were not just for me, but also for my brother and sisters. And as you can imagine, that was pretty tough. And now, I don't know if anybody finds themselves in that same situation. I would imagine that it would have been tougher for me now, because I would have to show her how to use the internet, which, as you could tell, I'm having some trouble with that now. A lot of the applications, looking at grades now, all that is online. So imagine all that. I don't know if anyone out there is in my same shoes. So all I had to do was fill out that yellow emergency card. Anybody have to do this for your parents in their language? I don't know if I can see a show of hands.
We have a few people out of our 44 people who are kids who've had to interpret for their family and fill out cards. We have about 10 people in the audience who are saying that.
That's an awesome responsibility. It's tough, it's hard, I know it is, and it's a lot of responsibility on you guys. But it is something that teaches responsibility, and it teaches you to be responsible not just for yourself, but for your family. And later on in life, you'll see that, again, those things will translate. You'll start seeing yourself do that, not just for your parents, for your friends, for your patients. So I attended Garfield High School, again, in East LA. I was lucky enough to get picked out of my regular high school math class due to excelling in an entrance math skills test. I joined Mr. Jaime Escalante's algebra class. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I was a chemo kid. Chemo is the name for Dr. Escalante, Mr. Escalante. He called himself this in class. No one knows what this means. Look up that movie, Stand and Deliver. This was made about him. It was made about this particular excellent teacher. He was the first one to introduce me to the idea of going to college. Once I joined his class, I looked at the other classes that were being offered, and I would say that in a matter of weeks, I switched from my regular math class to his algebra class. I switched over to honors English and history. And later in my junior and senior years, I took AP classes for both English, history, and of course, a couple of special literature classes like Shakespeare and mythology. And again, my first year in high school, I would have laughed if you told me I was going to take Shakespeare and mythology. So again, those first 2 weeks changed my life. So I have to say thanks. And this is a shout out, by the way, for all those teachers out there, because I know how important your position is. So if you're a teacher out there, and you guys are probably tired of raising your hand, so I won't ask you to do so, but I just want you to know how important it is that if you see a spark, if you see something special in a child, you want to point it out, you want to nurture it, and then to see them fly, see them get that desire to go forward, that desire to echarle ganas, which is what Mr. Escalante used to say in class. Come on, guys, ganas. And that's what he taught us. The ganas would get us fly, would get us to fly, would get us far. So back to my story. I worked very hard in high school while I continued to work after school, and everything from selling shoes to tamales, to be quite honest with you. In the summer of my junior year, while taking an SAT course, I attended a workshop on applying for college. It was put on by the same team that worked with Dr. Escalante in East LA, in the East LA College. I remember meeting an amazing pre-med student from UC Santa Cruz who inspired me as to what I could do in the future. I went home and I told my mom all about this wonderful school, the pictures that I saw in the slideshow she presented, and the possibility of becoming a doctor. She replied to me that she didn't think so, that it was too far, and that, well, she didn't really think it was safe. And honestly, that's what she used to say to everything that she really didn't feel comfortable with me doing. The truth of the matter was that I wasn't legal in the United States. I didn't know at the time what that meant, to be quite honest with you, but that really stopped things quick. I couldn't do the next step, which was apply to college. In that same group of teachers and students and other special people that came out to work with us, there was an attorney. And fortunately enough, he had the bright idea that maybe I could get my legal status by using my father's residency status. Actually, my father was not just a resident anymore. He had applied for legal citizenship, and the idea was to use his original date of entrance as mine. So fortunately for me, by May of that year, I was coming back from Mexico, coming back home, of course, with papers in hand, and I was ready to apply to college. As you can imagine, that was May of my senior year. So way too late, unfortunately, to apply to Santa Cruz, but not too late to go to Cal State LA. To be honest with you, maybe Cal State LA was not a bad thing. I was really happy there. It was closer to home, just a bus ride away, and a lot more affordable. I took maybe about 6 years to graduate from Cal State LA to get my bachelor's. Just so you know, usually 4 years. Nowadays, maybe with the issues with impaction and not being able to get all your classes, it takes a little bit longer. But back then, it was 4 years. Part of the reason that it took me longer was because, frankly, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I was doing. I changed my mind so often as to what classes to take and whether I wanted to be a teacher, an attorney, a doctor. It's not even funny. But that's part of the reason that I wanted to give this talk, because I want you to know that there's always a way and that not everybody's path is straightforward. Again, this is the first time that I found out that there were many ways to skin a cat, and this was mine. So again, at first I had no intention of becoming a doctor. I began to gravitate, however, to science classes. And so when I started gravitating towards the science classes, I was actually asked to join a lab and do research and get paid for it. the best thing in the world, because that allowed me to be able to be in school a little bit longer. If I had to study, I had a lab, a quiet place where I can actually sit down and study. At the same time, I worked at a 24-hour immediate care room where I could work in the evenings and the weekends as a unit secretary. The nurses and the doctors liked me and frequently pulled me over to translate. This was my first experience at having that privilege of being in that room with the doctor and the patient, and just having that experience of that intimacy and that importance of that conversation. And I remember thinking, I could do this, and I can do this well. So I started exploring what the requirements were to become a physician. Again, I continued to work in that research lab with Minorities Biomedical Research Support Program. I joined Chicanos for Creative Medicine, CCM, and I joined HCOP, or Health Careers and Opportunities Program. This is where I met my community of friends, my community of teachers, my support, the people that studied with me, the people that showed me how to apply and what to study for to take the MCAT, which was the entrance exam to medical school. They also taught me how to apply for money to pay for the applications, because it all costs, and how to write my personal statement and how to interview. All those things were so important for someone who's inexperienced, who doesn't, know what it's like to apply for a job really formally. I was the first one to graduate from college, so my mother didn't know what it took. My cousins didn't know what it took. I really had no one else but the support system. And again, this is one of those key things that I want you to hear from me, is that you want to surround yourself. You want to form a group, a support group that can help you get through those moments where you doubt yourself, and that'll teach you how to get to where you need to be. My journey was not a straight one, as I said. It was full of rocks and hiccups. I did encounter a few setbacks. It was never perfect. As a matter of fact, I got to tell you, I didn't get into med school my first try. I did okay in my MCATs, and I actually got some interviews. I traveled to Omaha, and that's where I actually did my first interview. I was so positive I was in. I actually met a few people out there, and I got a lot of good vibes, and I thought, wow, Omaha. But I was willing to go wherever I had to go to med school. My application probably did not look as good as it should have. I actually considered a master's program, but when I was out there interviewing in Omaha, I found out about a post-bac program. This is a special program where they allowed me to go in and take some classes along with another 20 students, if I remember correctly. So it was a competition. But if I did well, and if my MCAT scores came up, I had the opportunity of being guaranteed a spot in that medical school, which was a lot more than a lot of other medical schools did. So I did well. And as you would imagine, as I said before I got in, part of what pulled my, I'm sorry, it just kind of went a little bit too forward. So unfortunately, when I had to make that decision to go away to med school, I had a lot of trouble making this decision. And part of it was because I didn't want to leave my family behind. I was nervous about my mom being so tired. I was nervous that my brother and my sister were about to start college, and she needed my financial assistance. I did the math. I remember thinking, she makes $3 an hour, and if I, start working once I graduate full time, I can make $10 an hour. So imagine the difference that would make in our lives. There was, however, another pull, and the pull was maybe that initial seed that made me want to be a doctor. This was a memory of one of the most scariest nights of my life. I must have been about 9. I went in with my mother as usual to translate for her to the emergency room. I remember how lost and scared I felt, but I had to help her. She was in a lot of pain. I remember watching her just writhing in pain. Gallbladder pain is cramping. People just can't hold the pain. I mean, I've seen people on the floor when they have this much pain, and I always remember her whenever I see this, and that's exactly how I felt that day, just unable to help her other than to translate her words. My mother had delayed her care. She had been in pain for quite a while, and so I think that her pain and the severity of her disease was that much worse. So that night, I was asked to leave her side. I was only 9, so I couldn't stay with her. And again, I was very worried about what would happen. Her gallbladder actually ruptured. Instead of her being in and out one day, she stayed for a week because she was so infected. So why did this happen? This happened because she didn't have medical insurance, because we didn't have the money to pay for us to go in any sooner. It happened because she didn't want to miss work. So this is the reality of what happened to her. And I'm sure that it's happened to other people. I know it happens to a lot of other people. So now I am gonna ask you to raise your hand. Has anyone ever been scared in a situation like this? Have you ever been maybe in a room like the one I have here on screen, where you have, people talking over you, people talking and saying things and words that you don't understand? And it's not just Spanish or English. I mean, these are just totally unfamiliar words. Have you ever been scared like this? Can someone raise their hand and tell me if they've ever been in this situation?
We have about 9 attendees, 9 people who have raised their hands. They identify, yeah.
It's scary. And you don't have to be 9 to be scared about things like that. I mean, I've seen people scared in these situations and they're 40, 50, 75. Any time that we don't have any control over our bodies and don't understand what lies ahead, it's a very scary feeling. So what happened to my mom, there were a lot of barriers. You see, these are the barriers that keep our community from seeking medical care on time. So if you ask me now why I became a doctor, there's so many different reasons, but honestly, I think this was it. This is what pushed me to go forward, to learn, to achieve my goal, no matter what. So I got into medical school, like I said, Creighton Medical School in Omaha, Nebraska. I was actually one of 10 minority students in our class of about 100. I can't possibly tell you the details in this one meeting of the cold and snowy days that we had to face and the hardship that I went through. I have to tell you again, I failed more than one time, but you know what? I always figured out how to get up and how to take that test again, or how to make up what I had to make up to make sure that not only did I pass, but that I excelled. Med school was one of the most rewarding experiences in terms of growth and realizing my own strength and potential. It's hard to say that I failed to you now, because when I was preparing this talk, all I could think of is all the successes, right? It's hard to think of those moments where things didn't go well. But again, thinking about hope, I don't think I ever did lose hope. I knew that I had to get through it. And so if I had to get through it, well, then I had to figure out how. And I did. So that's what you do. I went into residency. This is actually a kind of complicated, fun way to get into the next level. To go to residency, you actually have to match. What that means is that you go around and you pick a school, you interview the other students there, you interview the professors, you look around in the community, and you figure out what best fits you. After graduation, by the way, this is my best friend, Penelope. She was one of the people that graduated with me from medical school, and she became an OB-GYN, or a specialist in delivering babies. She was also my roommate through those years and my main support. Again, there were only 10 of us, but man, we were tight. So in residency, again, you interview them. Instead of them just interviewing you, you actually interviewed that university. And I was very happy to match to the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. My residency years were different. I don't know if it was because it was San Antonio and there were a lot more Hispanos, Latinos out there. The community that I worked in was awesome. The 12 residents that I worked with were also very supportive. I always felt supported. My teachers were always just on top of things, trying to make us better doctors. The neighboring community was also very welcoming. I think they loved that I spoke Spanish, especially the nurses. And I saw there, I learned to go ahead and see patients. I learned to deal not just with their medical issues, but their social, their economic issues. I learned how to use the system to help them really deal with some of their cases. And, I tell you again, some of the simplest cases could be so complicated because of the problems that we had at home. So our residency program emphasized that, the importance of having a medical home, of providing continuity of care to your patients. What that means is that I am their doctor. So when a patient walks in the door, I want them to be able to say, I'm here to look for my doctora, mi doctora Pantoja. And as a doctor, it's rewarding to know that that patient claims me, that they listen to my advice. After the completion of my residency training, I was recruited to work with Centro del Barrio. This is a FQHC. What that means is a federally qualified healthcare center. Working with Centro del Barrio, I saw both the CEO and the medical director obtain grants and partner with the community businesses to go ahead and do screenings for immunizations, for shots. They did screenings for teeth, for dental, They did screenings for mammograms. And in all those different drives that were held in the parking lot, by the way, it was a way of inviting the community to the clinic. So we would start there with the screenings, and then their next appointment was the actual appointment where we got work done. And again, that's how you break those barriers, by inviting people in. And that's the most important thing to me in our clinics, is that they're welcoming. Again, that patients see it as their home, that they know that someone is there waiting for them. So when I came home after graduating from my residency program in family practice, I looked around again for a job, or a place where I could work that would align with my views. And I was really impressed with Adelante, again, another FQHC. Their presence in our community here in East LA is over 30 years, and they've been very successful. They've had quite an impact in improving our community's access to care and quality of care. I've worked in different clinics. The first clinic that I worked with, my initial hiring spot, was as the medical director for the city of Bell, in the city of Bell. And later, after 5 years, I became a staff physician in my old neighborhood of East LA and Boyle Heights. I now work in the West Covina site, and I gotta tell you that with the clinics, I've grown working with this group. I've learned so much, which is what you want. You want to always continue to grow and learn. So let me tell you a little bit more about the practice of medicine. This is at the West Covina site, by the way, where I work. So, as I mentioned earlier, there were only about 10 minorities in my class, and about 1/3 of us were female out of 100. So not very much. The progress of women in medicine has been a slow one, but it seems to actually have picked up some speed lately. According to the Medical Association, over the last 10 years, the number of women in medicine has grown steadily, and we now are at about 41.9% of the U.S. physician workforce, compared to 5% in 1970, and halfway through in 2010, 33.9%. 2017, in fact, just a couple of years ago, was the first year that the number of women enrolling in medical schools exceeded the number of men enrolling. So when I first walked into that big lecture room, honestly, I really didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. most of them were guys, and they weren't my nationality either. In 2019, 52.4% of the students that matriculated into medical school were female. So again, that's half. That's awesome. The three top specialties shown, or the three top specialties chosen in primary care are internal medicine, family practice, and peds. Primary care is very important because that's where people come to meet you for the first time. You know, when they come in again for their physicals, for their shots, when you bring in your children for their peds visits. So these are very important roles that we are selecting. So we've come a long way. However, there's still a lot of work to be done. Among women physicians who identify as being in a leadership position, only 10% really report being either chairs or department CEOs or CMOs or in a medical leadership position. And unfortunately, the pay gap is also still very wide. Even if you are in the same position, men unfortunately make a lot more money than we do as females. So while the numbers are improving, we still have a lot of work to do. It still is a very lonely road for those of us Latinos who have pursued a career in medicine. The Association of American Medical Colleges found that about 5% of medical school graduates right now identify as Latino. This is data from 2019. So as I mentioned before, I'm a family medicine doctor. So to me, the family medicine specialty means that we have to work with the family, not just with their illnesses, but also to try to push people to achieve better quality of health as well as education. I looked at this one article that actually compared the Hispanics in the community that are represented as physicians compared to the general public. And I don't know if you could see the slide well as far as the colors, but if you look at the red, that's actually the general population of doctors. The doctors, and then the blue is the general population. So as you can tell, for Latinos, there's not really a lot of doctors representing patients. So the family medicine specialty was actually born alongside the civil rights movement in 1966. 3 years before the American boards approved family practice as a specialty, the National Commission on Community Health stated that every person should have their own personal physician. They also said that the doctor should be aware of the many social, emotional, and environmental factors that influence the health of a patient. Exactly what I said earlier. As a doctor, I know I got to treat your illness, whether it be diabetes, hypertension, whatever it may be, but I also want to look around and see, well, what is causing this illness? Is it because, you're not seeking care because you're so busy working? Excuse me, not that you're busy working, because you can't afford not to work and come in to see me. I also want to look around and see, do you have access to the right foods? Are you able to go to Vallarta and get, the right vegetables, or, the only thing around you, McDonald's, those are really important things that a doctor by herself can't solve, but as a community and by participating with other groups, we can try to see if we can make changes in our community so that, again, we don't suffer from these illnesses. So some of the things that I think about when I think about people coming into the urgent care is, what brought you in to begin with? What caused the fall? What caused, your sugar to be 300? And I mentioned the urgent care room because, again, a lot of times that's when people come in when they're the sickest. So the American Association of Family Practice set a goal to ensure that by the year 2030, 25% of medical school seniors select family medicine as a specialty. They actually established in 2017 the Centers for Diversity and Health Equity. So again, keeping in mind that it's not just access that they want for everyone, they actually want family practice to represent our population, our general population, which means that there are more minorities now, so they should represent us also. For those of us in medicine already, we have to continue to work hard to inspire and mentor more women, more minorities to seek a career in medicine and to seek leadership positions in medicine. Our goal is to have our workforce reflect, again, the overall population. Our goal is to help students figure out their path to medicine. Our goal is to get students to want to even come to medicine to begin with. You know, I can only imagine in the future what the new generation of students will do. They will change the face of medicine today. They will change some of those long established practices that sometimes don't fit us as a community. So as you probably guessed, I'm here to recruit you. I'm here because I want you to wear a white coat. When my patients see me in a white coat, I know they see a healer. I know they see a teacher because they often refer to me as Miss. So I know they're thinking about the kids' teachers. They see me as someone respected in their community, a trusted friend that always has them, their best interest in mind. We need more of us Latinos graduating from medical school. Because most of us that go to medical school, we come back to our neighborhoods, or at least we're more likely to come back than others. And this is where we're needed. We need to fill that gap, not just with language, but also, you know, to keep in mind the culture, the beliefs, the needs that our community has without judgment. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for thinking of me for this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Pantoja. It was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, our student moderator. He's going to read some questions to you from our Q&A window. We've got plenty of questions, things people are curious about. So Michael, go ahead.
All right. And also take this time to write a question yourself if you have one in the chat. Okay. So our first question is, who is your biggest inspiration?
You know, I don't know if you guys heard. Well, Dr. Escalante, and I mentioned Dr. Escalante, at the time he was Mr., but he actually received an honorary degree at Cal State LA as a doctor. So he was one of my biggest inspirations, has been always. He told us the story that he was actually a janitor in a company, actually an engineering company. And he went to college after work. He got his degree in teaching and stopped working as a custodian and started teaching. So he was older, definitely a different path. He never stopped. He actually got the honor of also being called a doctor. So he was my inspiration. Along with that, I also have to, and I know this may sound kind of corny, but I have to say that my mother's also an inspiration to me. She's not a doctor, but she is the hardest working woman I can ever think of. Not only was she able to go to her job and work, you know, full-time job and come home tired and cook for us. Sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, she was sitting in front of the sewing machine doing some extra work for someone. You know, sometimes when I'm in front of my computer late at night, I remember those nights. Sorry. She worked really hard.
This is a good question, kind of leads into that. How does your mother feel now that you are a doctor?
She's very proud. Not just with our relatives, our family. I mean, oh my God, that woman loves the fact that I was able to achieve this. She's very proud of what I've achieved, and she motivates my now nephews and my own children to do whatever they can to get ahead. So she loves that, of course.
How did you persevere and keep pushing?
Well, again, you know, sometimes it's hard to know what keeps you going. You know, I mentioned that one memory just because it's something that I hold really close to my heart in trying to help her. So that pushed me along, that once I started something, I knew that I had to finish it. I guess that's one of those things. I started this, I'm going to finish this, I'm going to achieve this. But you know, the other thing that continued to help me push through was that when I did fail or mess up, whatever you want to call it, I never forgot that I loved being a doctor. Once you start going into the rotations, for example, my very first rotation, I think, was an OB rotation, and I was delivering children. And that's one of the best things in the world, is to be able to deliver a healthy, screaming baby. And I never forget that feeling of giving that mother the baby and seeing that happiness, her success at having been able to have this beautiful child. And I love that feeling. Just like I love the feeling now. I don't deliver babies anymore. I stopped doing that after I had my own children. But, you know, it's still inspirational when I have a patient come in and tell me, my diabetes is now under control. I gave up soda. Or, you know what, I finally had that conversation with my child and gave up drugs. And I know it's not that easy. It takes a long time to achieve these things. But every time, those things encourage me to continue to go on. Now, and honestly, when I was in med school, when I took that first rotation, I knew I had to get there. I knew I had to finish.
Do we have time for one more question? Yeah.
Oh, yes. No, you have time for a few. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What do you love doing to help other Latinos?
Apart from medicine, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, these talks, for example, I mean, I know they still relate to medicine, but I have a lot of students who will at times reach out to me, both in college and in high school, and say, you know, can I shadow you? Can I come in and just see what you do? I could think of a patient in particular recently that reached out to me and said, you know, can I just hang out? Can I see what you do? And along the way, she told me when she graduated high school, she called me and told me, I'm going to UCLA. When she graduated UCLA, she called and she told me, I'm thinking about medicine still. When she took the MCAT, she told me she was doing it. And that's one of the things that really motivates me, to see her succeed. As a matter of fact, she graduated recently. And I'll give her numbers sometimes to other students that are younger than her that also want to be in medicine, so she can tell them how to apply, since she's closer to it now. So the thing that I love the most is being able to see those successes, the successes of the younger kids getting into med school and graduating and going on.
Michael, could you mind asking the question, because I'm really curious about this, about the Garfield High? Can you see that one in the Q&A?
Oh, yeah, so am I. How well did the movie Stand and Deliver depict Jaime Escalante and the inspirational story of success at Garfield High?
Well, I mean, I don't think a movie could ever really depict everything, right? You only see a little bit about the person. What I remember about the movie, it's been a while since I've seen it, but you know, the thing that really stands out the most is that energy that he had. He had so much energy in that classroom. I mean, he would walk in there, and of course he'd have us there sometimes at 7:30 in the morning. We'd go in and do our homework early in the morning, so that if we had questions, he could help us. And sometimes we were there after school, you know, late after, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock sometimes, and he was still there helping us. He went far and beyond, what would be expected of someone. And the energy was always up. He always just had that go, con ganas, échale ganas. And if there's anything I can say about the movie is that it really reflects that energy about him. And as far as what I know about him, I mean, that's what I saw. I didn't know him privately, so I'm not sure what his personal life was like, but I can tell you that that's what he represented in class.
Thank you. Okay, here's a question. What is the most memorable moment you've had with your patient or with a patient?
There's so many, but can only remember the latest one. Yes. You know, I led some diabetes education classes for a while. I worked with some promotoras. Promotoras are health educators that are from the community. They're not nurses. They're not doctors. They're just patients that have diabetes and have, you know, gotten ahead and been able to control it. And you learn a lot from people that have gone through it already. You learn what to change. And as a group, sometimes you have better conversations and you inspire each other to move along. So one of the most memorable moments that I have from one of those groups is I had a patient who had been my patient for about 5 years. And she all of a sudden became inspired in the group, and she said, you know, I have to confess, I haven't been using my insulin, but I'm going to start now. And it was funny because I knew it, you know, and I turned around and I looked at her and I said, I know, señora, you'll say, okay, qué bueno, let's start your insulin. And she did.
I'm pretty sure we still have time for like another question. Yeah, last question. Okay, what is the most difficult part of your job?
You know, the most difficult part of my job is being in a situation where I can't do anything. That's the most difficult part. There's always something, I guess. Today, as a matter of fact, I talked to a patient who told me she was homeless, and it didn't come out right away. She had been in the hospital and she had been pretty sick over the weekend, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And one thing led to another, and she told me that she hadn't been to the dialysis center because she didn't have transportation. This is probably a heavy one to address as a last question, but the reason she didn't have transportation is because she was homeless. And so to get transportation, you actually had to give them an address, you know, where they pick you up. To get a lot of the services you need to have an address. And she doesn't have that. So you feel really useless. You know, I'm one of those people that sometimes when someone tells me, you know, I can't get my medicine, I say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's go to goodrx.com. Let's go to, you know, the pharmacy downstairs and see if we can get you a special deal just for this month. You know, a lot of times I just do it, you know, I can't help it. But when someone says they're homeless, what can you do? What are you going to do? I mean, you can't invite them home, which is sometimes what I want to do, to be honest with you. But I did learn as a resident that you have to reach out and look and see who's around you, who can help that person. I did a referral to a case management group, and as I hung up the phone today after talking to her, I just kind of crossed my fingers and said, I hope somebody calls her. I hope somebody can really help her. And I have to let go. You know, I have to say, someone's going to help her. Someone's going to call her. And it's really hard to let go. That's the hardest part of my job.
Thank you, Dr. Pantoja. That was a perfect way to end this. Michael, thank you so much for handling the moderating duties in our Q&A. Let me see right here. So, muchas gracias. We appreciate you very much, Dr. Pantoja. Thank you so much for adding to our volume of knowledge for our Hispanic Latinx community in Glendale. We really appreciate you, and you were inspiring to me as well, especially when I found out you were a chemo kid. That's amazing. I just wasn't ready for that. So everybody, this Wednesday we'll have Fire Chief Sylvia Lanzas, Fire Chief for the City of Glendale, and also the CFO. And also, please save the date coming in November to highlight our partnership with the Glendale Central Library. We'll be having Dia de los Muertos. We will be having different community ofrendas, including people with the district and people in the regular community. Also, I want to point you to the Glendale Community College Latinx Heritage Month. They have a website here. I realize the address is really long. Go to GCC or glendale.edu and you'll be able to find a link on their homepage. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Dr. Pantoja, I just need to warn you, I should have warned you ahead of time. When I turn off the webinar, it turns off. So I want to say thank you to everybody, especially to you. We'll be in touch. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Good night.